Okay, our presentation tonight is How iNaturalist is Revolutionizing Butterfly Watching by Neil Bjorklund. Neil is a native Oregonian who has been watching Oregon's butterflies for more than 40 years and photographing them for nearly as long. He created the comprehensive website on Oregon butterflies, www.butterfliesoforegon.com, which features several hundred of his photos of live butterflies. His photographs have also appeared in newspapers, galleries, and magazines, and many are featured in the Pocket Guide to Butterflies of Lane County. Recently, his photo of Oregon's state butterfly, the Oregon swallowtail, was featured in the new edition of the Oregon Blue Book, the official booklet of information on the state of Oregon. Neil was a co-founder of the Oregon chapter of the National American Butterfly Association, and he was its former president and science advisor. He has given numerous presentations on Oregon butterflies to enthusiastic audiences in Oregon and Washington, and has led countless field trips to Oregon butterfly hotspots. His feature-length article on key Oregon butterfly sites appeared in the summer 2002 issue of American Butterflies. Thank you for being with us tonight, Neil. And I also want to welcome our fellow lepidopterists from Oregon. So please go ahead and get started, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paulette. It's a pleasure to be here. I first have to start off just by heaping tons of props onto WABA and what you all have done for butterflying and butterflies in the state of Washington is so impressive. I wish we had a third or even a quarter of the participation and coordination and education and everything that you have going on. So to me, you guys are the model that I hope that Oregon NABA is looking at and trying to emulate. So amazing. I think about it constantly, like, gosh, we should be doing that too. I really appreciate that you're all there in Washington doing what you're doing, and that know that you're an inspiration to some of us down here in Oregon. I'm going to start off with a little slideshow just to get us started. And then we'll kind of move into diving right into live iNaturalist. So let me share my screen. And hopefully this will work very seamlessly. You should now be seeing a slide that says how iNaturalist is revolutionizing butterfly watching. Is that what you're seeing?
That's what we're seeing.
Good, okay. So this is my website. For those of you who are in Oregon, I know there are a few Oregon people who who tried to watch the Oregon online version of this presentation, which was an absolute debacle. Every technical thing that could go wrong went wrong more than once. And I am amazed that some folks actually stayed through the whole thing. It was amazing to me. This website it's probably going to end up becoming an app. It's probably going to end up becoming a book, but for right now, it's basically an online field guide, as well as the blog of my adventures of butterflying in Oregon. So check it out if you haven't seen it yet. The butterfly finding guide that I did, I don't know, 16, 20, 50 years ago, whenever it was, it just came out in its 4th edition. When it came out, I think it was the first of its kind, a regional guide to when and where to look for butterflies and what you'd find. It was, I based it on all the old bird finding guides that used to be the way that people found out where to go birding. And still keeping it going. So that's out there. Proceeds from that go to the Oregon NABA group, so you can feel good about spending that money. This spring, I was, overhearing your all's conversation about what you've seen and haven't seen, and the cold spring and all that. And a friend of mine and I, who went out just like 3 days ago on an 80-degree day after several warm days, and really had to scrounge to find some butterflies to look at. So we decided that butterfly scrounging is a thing. It's what you do in this kind of a weather cycle. And so far, what I've been able to scrounge this year is a couple of green commas, a morning cloak, a few California tortoiseshells, quite a few echo azures, exactly one two-banded checkered skipper, a handful of Moss's elfins. We have a good site near Eugene here. And today I finally saw a Mylita crescent, and the Purpureus dusky wings have been flying. It's been a real slow start, and that's kind of a segue into talking about iNaturalist, because one of the things I discovered this winter when I really missed being out chasing butterflies is I could chase butterflies virtually, and I could do it anywhere in the world. And that kind of inspiration, that kind of like, oh wow, there's an opportunity here that I didn't realize, is a little bit the impetus for this presentation. And these two guys, these are two of my bird watching pals, John Sullivan and Forrest. I'm blanking on Forrest's last name right now. Hopefully, Forrest, you're not watching this, and I'm not making a fool of myself in front of you. We have birded a lot together, but last summer I said, hey, would you guys like to go out and look at some butterflies? And it took exactly one time out, and they were both hooked. And so we went out a few times, and meanwhile, the two of them had also gotten hooked on using iNat. And we have, all three of us have a mutual friend named Rich Hoyer, who's a world-renowned bird guide, and he's a very prolific poster to iNaturalist.org. Like, I don't know, he's approaching 20,000 postings, something like that. And it's from all over the world, all the places that he goes. And John went out on a trip with him in Brazil, and John really got the iNaturalist bug. And so then every time John and I went out, John would say, Neil, you really should try iNaturalist. And I'm like, I don't know. I have so many photos and it's going to take forever. And what's the point anyway? I can access my photos. And, but he kind of planted the seed. And so here you are seeing a look at my database. This is a database that I created. It has over 9,000 records in it now, just butterflies I've seen in Oregon. And you can see in the upper left there, if you can see that, those little numbers, 1,830 of these are photo vouchered. So, because what I did in this view is I sorted, just show me the photo, the records that have photos. So I'm thinking, oh man, that's almost 2,000 photos. If I have to enter those one by one, that's going to be a real pain in the rear. And so I was hemming and hawing. I didn't really want to spend the time. It seemed too daunting. But John persisted. He kept talking to me about iNat. And so, Bob, you were asking about, or John, one of you were asking about butterflies in October. So it was October 22nd last year. My friend John was out and he found a bunch of sachem flying in his neighborhood, and he posted them to iNat, and he sent me a text with a link to his iNat post. And so I looked at his post and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I think I'm gonna go over there and photograph those. So I did, and there were lots of them flying. And so I ended up deciding, well, maybe this is where I try iNaturalist. So I just got these few photos. It's one species. How hard can that be? And so I posted those sachem photos. And I thought, well, that wasn't so hard. That actually was kind of cool. And then I let John know, hey, John, I posted my first things to iNat. And he congratulated me. Here's iNat. This is what it looks like when you have not logged in before. 132 million observations in there worldwide. So after those few sachem, my next thought was, okay, well, maybe this wasn't so bad. Maybe I'll just, maybe I'll upload a few more. Like maybe I'll do some of my really early ones. And so I chose this one to symbolize those, because the Milbert's tortoiseshell was the butterfly that got me started back in 1968, I think, when my dad took our family up to the top of Steens Mountain in southeastern Oregon. And it was a boom year for Milbert's tortoiseshells, and there were hundreds of them. I mean, like probably thousands. And I was captivated. And that, you know, my dad for Christmas that year bought me a book and a, you know, net and all this stuff and got me started. So that's where my butterflying started. And so I entered a few of those, just, you know, I'm just practicing. And so then I thought, well, actually, so I ultimately decided, well, maybe I'll just do Lane County. That's like I feel like that's something I can bite off. You know, it was a few hundred. So I figured out a way to pull the location data out of my own database and attach it to my photos so that when the photos went into iNat, iNat could read where they were from. And I also had put in, I had my database for all my photos has the name of the butterfly. And so I loaded those in, and sure enough, iNat would read some of that stuff and saved me time of having to hand enter all of it. And so I thought, well, okay, that wasn't so bad. Lane County, got that, great. So then I thought, well, maybe the next stage will be I'll enter one of every species I've seen in Oregon. So that was like 165 more. And I did that. And like, okay, that wasn't so bad. I'm starting to get the hang of it. It's not as cumbersome as I thought it was. And so then I thought, well, maybe I'll enter my butterflies from Costa Rica. So this is me in Costa Rica on in a little nature reserve in the northwest part of the country, where I saw no butterflies up there, but it was good for birds. So I did that. I entered all my Costa Rica butterflies, and that got done, and I felt this sense of accomplishment. So I said, well, maybe I'll enter my butterflies from Colombia. This is from one of my trips to Colombia with a couple of friends, way up in the northern end of the Chocó in the northern Andes. And that was a couple hundred. So then I thought, okay, then there's Ecuador, because Ecuador I have a lot more. So I got through all those. So now I've got all my Oregon, all my Costa Rica, all my Colombian, all my Ecuador butterflies in there. And, I got all that done within probably 6 weeks. And I was excited to have that stuff up there where somebody else might see it. And then I kind of forgot about it. Like I moved on to something else. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for just a second. And I'm going to switch to, let me see here. I want that to go away. So that I can see that. And then I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully what you're going to see is iNaturalist live. Right?
Yes, you'll see it, Neil.
Excellent. Okay. So here's my my sachem, one of my sachem photos taken over in Springfield. And what I want to do is I want to sort of tell kind of stories about what my experience has been since I entered all those sightings into iNat. And so these virtually all the photos that I entered last fall, I took the photos before I even knew about iNat. So like I was kind of, taking photos out of my own photo database and putting them into iNat. I haven't yet done the thing that you can do, which is take a photo with your phone and have that go directly into iNat. Because honestly, cell phones are crap for photographing butterflies. So I haven't done that yet. Okay, so one of the first things that happened was I posted this, what I called a Juba skipper. And, I very confidently ID'd it because by golly, it's got that displaced white check mark at the, basal hind wing. And that's a very strong Juba characteristic. And I posted away and let it go and didn't think about it. Well, after a few weeks, I noticed somebody had commented on this. And it is now my esteemed colleague, Merrill Peters, who commented on it, and he says, he disagrees. I think it's Western branded skipper. And so we had this conversation, and I went, back and forth with him about, well, what are the characteristics that say Juba? What are the characteristics that say Western branded skipper? And in the end, I invited Caitlin Labar to comment, and she came in and she agreed with Merrill. And ultimately, I agreed that he had a really good point, that I had been basing my idea of this butterfly pretty much only on the arrangement of the white checks on the ventral hindwing. And what he opened my eyes to was, well, the overall ground color, both on the thorax and on the wings, is very much not a Juba ground color. And you can't ignore that. And I'm like, wow, okay, this is amazing. I'm like, this is somebody I never even knew existed. I'd never met or heard of Merrill before. And he's gone online and looked at my butterfly, and he's now helping me learn something new about identifying butterflies that I have thought I knew how to identify for years. I'm like, so my response was, this is fantastic. Are you kidding me? Like, here's a guy, and I've been butterflying for a long time, and a lot of people look to me for help on Oregon butterflies. Not the, the greater fritillaries so much, but a lot of the other species. And so I've had this huge learning experience here, and it just really opened my eyes to, one, I've got blind spots in my kind of, the database of ID skills in my brain, and I can learn from other people on iNat. How amazing is that? So then I noticed that somebody had commented on this butterfly. I photographed it up by Boardman, right along the Columbia River. And I've photographed Yuma skipper in other parts of Oregon, and it looks almost exactly like this bug. And so I didn't spend a lot of time on the ID. And Merrill came in again, and he looked at this butterfly, and he said, I don't think it's Yuma skipper. I think it's Sylvanoides. I think it's woodland skipper. So we went back and forth about that. And, like now I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need to be open-minded about this. That's very possible that I made a mistake here. I've learned not to defend my IDs when somebody questions them. And in the end, I again called out Andy Warren, Caitlin Labar, and Merrill, and I put some information about Yuma skipper and da 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 da. And what came back was Caitlin said, "Oh, this looks like a really pale sandhill skipper." And I'm like, what? It looks pretty fresh to me. Like every mark that I know from sandhill skipper is not there. And then when we kind of dove in a little further, these, I guess, I don't know if you can see my pointer. Can you see my pointer?
Yes.
Okay, these little black marks along the edge of the wing are not found on Yuma skipper. And so that's where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'd never looked at that detail before on this butterfly. I'd only looked at the overall pattern and color and size and habitat. And so those little black marks do occur on sandhill skipper. And I found some on Butterflies of America. I found some examples where they were lightly marked, not this lightly marked, but those little black marks in the kind of those little, it's almost like a marginal spot band of black. Those were there. I'm like, oh my gosh. So here I am again, having this like, wow moment. Like if I had not posted these butterflies to iNaturalist, I would not have learned these subtle identification marks that I'd never heard anybody talk about before. And so not only am I learning, but now I can start rolling this stuff that I'm learning into my website where I'm providing descriptions of key ID marks on the butterfly in the field. So this made me really, really excited. And then it got even more fun. So here's a butterfly that for years I was absolutely convinced was a small wood nymph or a dark wood nymph, Oetis. And Merrill again was the guy who spotted this. And he said, no, I think this is a small wood nymph. And I said, what? Look how gray it is. Look how light it is. Look at everything about it. It just, and he said, okay, point taken, but look at the jaggedy line that goes through the ventral hind wing. You're not going to see that on the Great Basin wood nymph. And I was like, I had to literally like look closer at the photo. My screen over there is where I see the photo here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like it's a small detail that especially on this bug is pretty hard to see. But Merrill zoomed right in on it. And again, he taught me something this is a butterfly I've been seeing for decades. But this one in Central Oregon didn't look anything like the ones I'd seen in the Cascades. And so it did kind of stump me at the time. And the eye spots, the ones we have in the Cascades, the lower one is almost always much smaller than the higher one, and they're much darker. So those characteristics were really consistent until I saw this. So again, I'm going, wow, this is fantastic. I'm not even leaving my house, and I'm now having conversations with people who can identify some of these bugs better than I can, and they're teaching me how. Like I was so thrilled about this. I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I use iNaturalist before? I had no idea. Well, nobody that I knew who was using iNaturalist was sharing these kind of stories with me. And, you know, a lot of people, I actually know people who are competent butterflyers who won't post anything on iNat because they don't want anybody else to find that I misidentified it. I'm like, oh my gosh. That is so the opposite of where I am at this point. I'm like, I want to put stuff up so that other eyes can get on it. I mean, because, you know, several of you who are in this meeting have helped me identify things that I was stumped by before over the years. And so And so, more minds are always going to be better than one. So, this, like I said, this light bulb went off. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this opportunity, not just for me to learn, but for all the other butterfliers who are out there taking pictures, or maybe not taking pictures, who don't have a way to share their sightings with people in a way that others can kind of review their identifications and help them if they're, getting them wrong. So I started thinking, wow, I want to see if we can get a lot more people using iNaturalist. So that's one of the reasons I created this presentation in the first place and gave it to the Oregon NABA group, and did it online, although that didn't work so well, to really try to light a fire under people to use this amazing tool. Because as you'll see, there's a whole bunch of reasons, a whole bunch of things that can happen that you may not think about as a result of you posting your photos there. I mean, beyond just, getting a little bit of help identifying them. So let's jump to a different story in a different part of the world. So when I was a kid, after my dad discovered that I was a butterfly geek, he also gave me this book, The Encyclopedia of Butterflies, which had gorgeous color photographs of butterflies from all over the world. And there were two butterflies in this book that really just kind of were the epitome of the amazing beauty and elegance of butterflies. And one of them was this Marpesia marcella, also called the pansy daggerwing. I like Marpesia marcella as a name a lot better than I like pansy daggerwing. So I love these two butterflies so much that I basically taught myself to draw enough that I could draw portraits of them, which I framed and put on my wall. Well, years later, many, many decades later, I went to Costa Rica and I had a camera that was decent for photographing butterflies. And I saw a Marpesia marcella live and in person right in front of me. I'm like, oh my God, this is one of those butterflies that I loved when I was a kid. And so that was a really big thrill for me. And this past winter, after I had uploaded all these butterfly photos to iNaturalist, I thought, you know what I should do? I should go find the other one. So this is not my photo, but this butterfly, Ancylurus formosissima, it's in the metalmark family. It's found in Peru, Ecuador, and the very southern part of Colombia. And I love this photo. So I did a search on Ancylurus formosissima, and I knew that I was going to be going later this year to Ecuador and Colombia. So I just limited my search to those areas. Okay, where have there been recent records of this butterfly in those two countries? And so this record pops up. And I go, wow, that's interesting. Wonder what this other butterfly is. And why there's two butterflies, et cetera, et cetera. So you may not be able to read this, but so who weighs in on this photo but Keith Wilmot, who's the foremost expert in Ecuadorian butterflies and works at the McGuire Center in Florida. And he's the director, I guess, of the butterfly center there. And he says, well, the one on the left, Ancylurus formosissima, that's Ancylurus formosissima. The one on the right looks like Ancylurus mira. Both rare species. I don't think there are any other iNat records of either. To capture both in the same photo is amazing. And the guy who photographed them was a birder, had no idea what he was seeing, and got a photo of two rare butterflies in one frame. I'm like, wow. That is amazing. That is really, that's so fantastic. I just, and he didn't know what he had, but he realized afterwards, oh, wow, really? Well, I contacted the guy who took the photo, and I was able to track him down through iNaturalist. And I said, I want to go find that butterfly. What can you tell me about where you found it? Oh my God, the guy gave me like step-by-step instructions for this trail, and I went to here and it was right in there, and all like literally I'm going to be able to go to the exact place in Southern Colombia that he went to where he saw this. Now the odds that I'm going to find it there are slim, honestly, because I think it's a butterfly that's widespread but not common anywhere. But just the fact that I have a chance there, and then I also will have a chance at several places in Ecuador, where and all these places I will have local butterfly experts guiding me, and so I'm very, very excited about this. So down at the bottom of the screen here, can you read this? Is this way too small to read on your screens?
I can read it. I'm not
okay.
sure.
Yeah, so my handle on iNaturalist is Butterflies of Oregon, and right above me is Indiana Cristo. So he's one of the top butterflyers in Colombia. And because of iNaturalist, because I've seen him and interacted with him, and he's put identifications on my butterflies, I wrote to him. And now when I go to Colombia, I'm actually going to go meet up with him. And I'm going to do a little, some things to support his work with the butterfliers in Colombia. So here's this, this forum for connecting with other people in other countries. And I've interacted with Keith Wilmot before, and he's weighed in on some of my butterflies as well. And it's just been really, really fun to be learning from and connecting with and kind of forging alliances with some of these people through iNaturalist. So then gets even more fun. So I have been twice to a place called the Camino Montezuma. It's where that photo of me and two friends up in the mountains was taken. That was the very top of the Camino Montezuma. And it's kind of in west central Colombia, more or less due west from Bogota. And my friend Michelle Tapasco owns an eco lodge there, and she is a local woman who is as crazy about butterflies as I am. So when I met her, we just went all crazy photographing butterflies. And they use the bait that it's used by butterfly photographers. So it's clear and it doesn't leave anything ugly in your photo. And it's fermented fish guts that are blenderized and filtered. And so you can spray it on leaves. So this butterfly is actually, mopping up some of that fish gut spray bait. And it was very happy to have me come within a few inches of it to take this photo. So Eucalasia is a genus of metalmark butterflies. It's a large genus. And I was kind of stumped on what this was for quite a while. But with some help from my friends in Colombia, and I think maybe Indiana Cristo might have weighed in on this. Can't remember who was. Oh, Gerardo Escobar. Yeah, another Colombian weighed in on it and helped me figure out that this was Eucalasia tenebrosa. So this is the first time this species has been posted to iNaturalist anywhere in the world. And so, and I had no idea. For all I knew, this was a species that was common and people had posted it a million times. And so when I found found out that not only had never been posted before, but the taxon wasn't even in iNaturalist yet. So I worked with some folks to get the taxon added to iNaturalist so that it could be correctly identified and thereby established on iNat that, yep, this species exists and it's in this part of Colombia. So now other people who are researching butterflies there now have that photo to be able to verify there's records there. I pride myself on really, really clear photos, and I'm able to get them oftentimes because of 30 years of practice. And so there's a resource there now that I feel really good being able to share that. So that was pretty exciting for me to be the first person in the world to post this to iNaturalist. Well, it gets even more fun than that. So this butterfly was, I photographed this in 2011 in Ecuador along the Napo River. I was staying at an eco lodge called Sani Lodge, and I had a bird guide and a butterfly guide with me every day. And we'd go out and look for birds and butterflies. And we did one day where we were just stopping on sandbars along the Napo River. And I photographed this butterfly. And there's no field guide for Ecuadorian butterflies because it would be, it'd be about a foot thick. And so I didn't have any idea what it was until I got home. I kind of knew that it was probably in the genus Calicore because I was familiar with that. Well, so lo and behold, I've been sitting on this photo for 11 years. I post it to iNaturalist. I kind of forget that it's there. I had put an ID on it that was incorrect. And then when you have an iNaturalist profile, you have a feed. So when somebody comments on something that you've done, then that'll pop up in your feed. And I see this butterfly pop on and go, oh, I got to see what this is. So what happened was I'll talk a little bit more about iNaturalist projects in a moment, but there are projects which gather photos of certain kinds of critters in certain areas. And Keith Wilmot had created one for Ecuador, for butterflies. And I had posted all my Ecuadorian butterfly photos to his project. And so what that allows him and other experts to do is kind of notice the feed as new things are coming in. Well, I came in with like 250 all at once. So suddenly they're like, whoa, all these pictures. So that kind of got their attention. Well, so let's see, where is it? Yeah, so there's a guy whose handle is Belgian Birding. I think he's Belgian, but he's made a lot of trips to the tropics and he's pretty good with tropical butterflies. And he says, I think this is an Astarte 88, Calicore Astarte. Well, Keith Wilmot weighed in on it and said, yep, that's what that is. And he says, incredibly, this seems to be the first reliable record for this species from Ecuador. Remarkable. So not just the first photo posted to iNaturalist, it's the first record in the country. And then when I emailed back and forth with Keith Wilmot, he told me, this is even more incredible than you realize. I and my researchers have been looking for this butterfly for 30 years. And we've never found it. And here you've got it. I'm like, whoa. So if I wasn't already inspired to post my photos to iNaturalist, that just lit a bonfire under my rear end, I got to tell you. So that was just so much, that was so fun for me. I immediately started planning another trip to Ecuador. It's like, I wonder what else I can find. So So I will be going back and doing intensive butterfly searches and photography trips for a few weeks in the area around Tena, Ecuador. Let's see if I can remember his name. It'll come to me. There's a well-known lepidopterist from the UK who's very knowledgeable about Ecuadorian butterflies. He wrote the book on Venezuela. Dang, I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, he gave me a lot of information, so I'll know exactly where to go. And I hope to get some more surprises in Ecuador. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about projects. So this is a project for the Butterflies of Oregon, and there are two kinds of projects. There's one kind is basically the old kind of project where you have to intentionally submit your photos to that project. The new kind of project automatically collects them. So we have this Butterflies of Oregon project, and every single butterfly that's in Oregon that's submitted to iNat automatically gets collected by this project. And you can see there that a row of photos of butterflies, that's the feed of the latest sightings that have come in. And the fourth one, the one on the right there is mine from this morning, the Mylitta crescent that I found. And so there are various ways that you can interact with all these photos. You can see a listing, a visual listing of all the species in Oregon that have been submitted. And let me just see if the page is going to work correctly here. See if we can go all the way down to the bottom of the list where things really get fun. No, it's still not working right. So there are quite a few butterflies in Oregon for which there's only one submission. And for some reason, this iNat project isn't allowing us to go all the way to the bottom of the list. But you can see here, each butterfly has a little button that says observations. Oh, look, Nevada skipper, they're all mine. It's not surprising. It's a hard butterfly to find. Yeah, so you can go to any of these butterflies that's been seen in Oregon and click on observations, and you'll see all the records that have been submitted and who they've been submitted by. If you click on one of those, you can see where they submitted it or where they saw it. So I find this to be really, really valuable. And I'm in these Oregon butterfly sightings all the time. We now have around 23,000 butterfly sightings in Oregon in iNaturalist. And that has jumped immensely in the last 2 years. Like 3-4 years ago, there weren't that many, but now there are so many that we're actually getting good coverage across the state. And I'll talk more about that in a second. So that's one project. I also created a Butterflies of Lane County project, and I'm trying to get people interested in that, so that they're both, you know, anybody who submits a sighting in Oregon, it will automatically show up here. But what we can do with these projects is we can also communicate. Like I'm hoping to do like a sighting of the month. I'm hoping to like highlight certain information that we've learned through iNaturalist, so people can have the benefit of that and use it as a kind of a point of connection. So let's see, what else we got here? Oh, so here's the Butterflies of Costa Rica project. You can see a list of everybody who has submitted here. let's see, and I'm in Costa Rica, I'm way down the list here somewhere. I don't even know where I am. It's there's a lot more people submitting photographs in Costa Rica than there are countries further south. Oh wait, that's because I want to be an observer. That's it. So I always find it interesting because it's something you can also do in eBird, is to see like who are the people who are really getting out there a lot and identifying a lot of things. And here you can see the list of all those people in Costa Rica. I'm still trying to see where I am on this list, but I haven't even gotten down as far as where I am. So I'm way down the list in the number of species I've seen in Costa Rica. In Colombia, I'm down the list. This one has both butterflies and moths, hence the 5,471 species. That's butterflies and moths. And then here is Keith Wilmot's butterflies of Ecuador. And these are all butterflies. Almost 1,200 of them have been seen. And it's a really, really good resource. And here I was shocked to find, there I am with the third most species of anyone on iNaturalist in Ecuador. I had no idea. So, it's like that told me that what I had done in my 2 trips to Ecuador actually was really more important than I realized. Like I was out there just doing my thing, but by sharing the results of my efforts, now all these people, the experts and the lay people and the other people who want to learn more, are all getting the benefit of all the time and effort I put in to find and photograph all those butterflies and to ultimately identify them. Okay, I'm going to stop here and see. Okay, let's see what some of these questions are. I see there's a lot of them. Oh yes. So, how do you streamline the process of entering photos into iNat? So I'll speak to that briefly. There are, ideally, if your camera records GPS, that helps you streamline, just like your phone does. Your phone records the GPS with each photo. And if your camera will do that, then when you upload your photo, iNat already has the GPS. And all you have to do is enter the name of the butterfly. Now, if you are using a database like Lightroom, which I use for all my photography, including butterflies, and I catalog everything, so I have already named all the butterflies. If you have the GPS and the name attached to the photograph, when you upload those into iNat, you can do them in bulk. You can upload 200 at a time. And then you go take a break, walk around the block, eat dinner, come back, and it will have logged all those in, and it will put in the name that is closest to what you entered. Here we get into little taxonomic snafus because iNat kind of uses their brand of both common names and scientific names. And so sometimes they don't match the ones that I use or that many people out here in the West use. So I did have to do corrections. But there's a bulk uploader, and if you have all that information attached to your photos, that is the easiest way to get a lot of them in there with the least amount of work. It is set up so that you can add that information. If you're doing a few photos at a time, if you're not doing the big catch up, like, I entered over a couple months, I entered 2,200 photos. But if you're just doing a few at a time as you see them, it's pretty easy to just, type in the name and pop in the location of the photo if it's not already attached.
So there is a follow-up question about taxonomy, about the issue of evolving taxonomy for iNat or any other.
Yes. Yeah. So I've primarily over the winter, I'm now involved in some of that. So I've been working with some of the, I forget, there's a name for them. They're not called taxonomists. They're called curators, I think. And they're the ones that help update the taxonomy that's in iNaturalist. And so what happens, I'll just give you an example here. So if I click on a submission, and then I click on the butterfly that's listed as the ID, that is going to take me to the profile for that butterfly, okay? And so this is, kind of all the information about that particular butterfly. Some of them, I don't know why this one isn't doing it, but some of them will also display a page from Wikipedia for that butterfly species. And so what I've been noticing is Wikipedia is way out of sync with taxonomy, way out of date with many of the splits of species that we've had in recent years. So I've been putting in time trying to update Wikipedia and then using resources that John and Caitlin and Bob and Andy Warren and others have been working on, citing papers and whatnot, and then submitting those to the iNat curators so that they are getting the right taxonomic epithets. And I've found them to be very open, like they're, maybe it's because, I've now, submitted 2,000 butterflies and I've identified a few thousand more, and that once you do that kind of thing, you get credibility in the system. Paulette, did that address the question? I felt like I started rambling.
I'm not sure if it did. Paul, do you want to unmute if you have an additional comment, or we could wait till the end?
Yes, that pretty much addressed it. I guess I was taking it a little farther in recognizing that there's many other sites like Pomona, eButterfly, and even Butterflies of America, which has been a go-to for many years. And all of these are out of sync now. But it seems to me that iNat is the one that's staying the most current.
Yeah, and what people like me are doing is when we bring information in, we're putting citations to Butterflies of America, or we're putting in citations to the genomic studies, or whatever it is that's the basis of what we're saying. And there are enough curators that are interested in insects that are paying attention, and they've been really responsive so far. Example is Andy Warren did all this work with the Euphalotes blues in Oregon back in the early 2000s that appeared in his book Butterflies of Oregon. And he talked about the square spotted blue complex, and some of the taxa in that complex have not been resolved, have not been formally described, although we think they're species. And so I proposed to one of the curators in iNat, would you be willing to add a square spotted blue complex so that we can be accurate and not have people, not have the only option be using the wrong species? And they agreed to do that. So I've been working on reviewing those Euphalotes postings, little by little, and hopefully we'll gain some ground on that. So I appreciate your question, and yes, all these different online systems are using slightly different taxonomy. John's doing a fantastic job, with catalog and providing a well-documented look at that, and hopefully Butterflies of America are keeping up with that. I see another
John, do you want to chime in on that?
He's eating, so we'll come back to him.
Yeah, let me at the end. I'll talk about it at the end.
Okay,
yeah, great. There's a question. Jeff Thompson asked, did I compare iNat to eButterfly? I actually got pretty involved in eButterfly for a while, right before they were redoing their website and their app. And I made a strong push to go a certain direction, and they went the other direction. And I think there's some questions in here about, well, what do you do if you have a credible site record, but you didn't get a photo of it? Because let's face it, you can't get a photo of every butterfly you see. Sometimes it's just not possible. So iNat is not set up like eBird is, where you enter a list, and then if you want, you can attach a photo. In iNat, it works the other way around. You enter the photo, and that creates, that's the record. You can enter records into iNat that are not photo vouchered, but then nobody's going to look at them because they can't verify it, they can't learn from it, they can't do anything with it. And that's so much the focus on iNat.
So is there any benefit at all to submitting an observation if you don't have a photo?
There is, and I don't know what it is because I haven't done it yet.
Okay.
And to me, I've been kind of posting now again into some of the conversational groups to create a list function. So you could be at a certain spot and you could upload a list of everything that you saw at that site on that date, and they get all the information, and then you just attach your photos to those records. That's how you do it in eBird. It's very effective, there's a kind of a culture to iNaturalist that is, from its roots, basically with the purpose of having a very low threshold for participation, making it really, really, really easy for a novice who knows nothing. Like, you take a picture of something and I don't even know if this is a bug or a stick. You can submit a photo and people will help you identify it. And so those of us who are, more advanced than that, have been advocating that they sort of catch up to the fact that iNat is now being used worldwide by lots of experts, and wouldn't it actually serve the scientific purposes of iNaturalist to better accommodate those kinds of users? So we'll see how that goes. Okay, let me see. Let me just take a moment here and think about what else I can. So let me share a few other things, then we'll come back to questions. Okay, so there are several things that I love iNat for. And one is, if there's a target species that I am looking for and I want to photograph it, and this is something I've done for several years. If you've read my blog, you know that I've been trying for quite a few years now to photograph Gillette's checker spot up in Wallowa County. And there hadn't been any records of Gillette's checker spot for about 17 years. And nobody had collected it. I couldn't find anybody who'd seen one for all those years. Until a friend of mine from Portland posted a photo of a Gillette's checker spot 2 summers ago. I'm like, what? Of all people, it's a friend of mine, and he was leading a trip, and he netted a butterfly that he didn't recognize and took a photo of it, and it turned out to be Gillette's checker spot. First known record in 17 years. 2 days later, I was in the Wallowa, I was looking for that butterfly because he posted it to, well, he told me, you know, he emailed it to me, so I would have found out it anyway. But then the next day, another guy photographed one and posted that to iNat. And so I saw that record too. So this is for those species that are possibly widespread, but never a lot at once. It's very helpful to be able to see very recent records and where they are, and be able to often drill down into what road, what trail, where exactly was that? Because a lot of our species, you know, are kind of micro habitat preferring. So I've done a lot of those kinds of searches. Maybe in a certain county, I'm looking for a certain species, and I go see where those records are. So like right now, I am looking for, well, let's do one right here. So I'm looking for what they call lotus hairstreak. A lot of the rest of us call bramble hairstreak. And I want to look for it in Lane County. So boom, there we are. One record of lotus or bramble hairstreak in Lane County. It's out in the Coast Range. I will be there in about a week to go look for that colony of bramble hairstreaks. Absent iNaturalist, I wouldn't have known to go look there. So I'm really appreciative of David99 for posting that. Since it's the only, I know there are other places that Dana Ross has recorded them up in the Andrews Experimental Forest, but this is the most recent because most of his records up there are older. Okay, so, and here's a map that shows all the lotus hairstreak sightings in Oregon. So you can get a quick, visual picture of where are people finding these. Lots in the Coast Range and the Cascades and down in Siskiyous, pretty much. There is a bias in that most of the people who are using iNat live in the urban areas. And so I'll show you a map in a minute that kind of demonstrates there is a bias to the location of where most of the sightings are. And that map, I think, is going to be right here. So you can see a lot around Portland, Albany, Corvallis, Salem, Eugene, Bend, Redmond area. I don't know why there's so many down here. I guess that's the Siskiyou, Cascade Siskiyou National Monument, and there's been a lot of work done down in there. But then you can also see these blank areas where nobody's posted anything. And a friend of mine, Paul Adamus, does this with birds and eBird. He will map all the sightings. He'll look at a map of all the sightings, and he'll identify the blank areas, and he'll post to the birding community, hey, nobody's looking in this area. Please consider going out and looking for birds in this area because we don't know anything about it. And the same is true for butterflies. So here's a way that we can see the areas that are not being searched. And I happen to know there's some really interesting stuff down here in central Southeast Oregon. Species like no, drawing a blank. Okay. And then here is a zoomed in map. So in Lane County, you can see the sightings are predominantly most dense around urban areas. So those are probably, you know, folks going out with the cell phone, doing whatever they're doing, and they happen to see a butterfly. So they're not people like me who, I'm going out to see butterflies, I'm going to spend all day doing it, and I'm going to, you know, record everything that I see. So let's go back to your questions. Question about photo equipment. Do I use a different lens for little ones than the larger ones? I carry two cameras. These days, they're both Fujifilm X-T3s. For the small butterflies, I use an 80mm macro, and for the butterflies I can't get close to, I use a 1:400 zoom lens. I've been through many, many iterations, and I get the best possible images with these two cameras. They're not the most portable, they're not the most affordable, and carrying two cameras is something a lot of people are not willing to do. But to me, I prioritize really, really quality images, high quality images. So there's that. Let's see. Yeah, sorting. So here's one of the big frustrations that I have with iNat, and Regina, I share it with you. They do not have a taxonomic sort anywhere of any kind in iNaturalist. You cannot sort anything taxonomically. And for those of us who, you know, are steeped in taxonomical order and who want to see maybe a whole, you know, genus, not just a species, you want to see them all there together, there's no way to look at them that way. And there's a lot of people who have been pounding on the powers that be at iNaturalist to create a taxonomic sort. And so if you're on iNat, please request that feature. If you're not on iNat, get on iNat and request that feature. To me, it's just a huge, huge miss for this citizen science website to not actually support the scientific way of ordering your sightings. Just doesn't make any sense.
Okay, did you have some other information to present, Neil, or are we at the open question time?
We are at open question time. Yeah.
Okay, I know that John.
An hour, so.
Okay, I know John Pelham had a couple of points. Do you want to unmute, John, and chime in? Everybody can unmute at this point, and we'll just have open questions.
All right, Neil. First of all, great presentation. I love iNaturalist for all kinds of reasons, but I want to give a shout out first to Dr. Merrill Peterson, aka Farrell Merrill, and Caitlin Labar, my boss, to their dedication and expertise and going through iNat, identifying things. It's really, really useful and helpful to have that level of expertise, in the Northwest. And as you've noted, it's useful for everyone to be able to learn things. I learn things too. You know, I don't get every identification right. Merrill will sometimes come to me and say, "Hey, Pelham, maybe you got that one wrong," and it's like, "Oh my goodness, I did." So that's one thing. Number two is the taxonomy used currently in iNaturalist. At least for North America, is that expressed in the catalog, BOA catalog, my catalog. I'm going to give a little bump to that. That may change in the future, because Nick is coming along and reshaped butterfly taxonomy, especially for South America. So, but currently, that's why it's staying updated. It's because I keep the catalog updated. And number three. You sutured into my whole reason for loving iNaturalist very well. Everything you said is exactly right on. For me, though, it's that data. I get volumes of data. It's accompanied by images, which is always useful. You go to SCAN, which is another source of data, or GBIF, still another source of data. And they have, like if they identify a morning cloak, yeah, I'm pretty sure that they got that right. But a greenie or a checker spot, that's really iffy. iNaturalist, you have an image. You might not always be able to tell from the image, but it's better than what you had otherwise, right? So that's really, really an important factor. And the sheer volume of contributors, that's just amazing. And last, I want to say that, in all of the work that I've done, compiling all of this data, I've been rewarded with an understanding. Very few people obscure data. I mean, I understand why someone might, because, there's thousands of us collectors out there just waiting for you to tell us where things are so we can go kill them all. Wait a minute. There's maybe 2, maybe 3, but doesn't matter. Whatever reason they have, it's fine with me, because the volume of people that don't do that overwhelms, any information lost from obscure data points. So I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. iNaturalist is one of my favorite things right now.
Yeah.
I'm
so with you.
Drop the mic.
Yeah. So I'll say one thing about obscure data. So as an admin for a project, and I'm an admin for the Butterflies of Oregon project, people who sign up to it can allow me to see where their sighting is without letting all iNat viewers see it. And so that's another reason the project can be valuable, is you can limit who you're sharing the location information with. I think there's a way to get data if you have access to an admin, or if you're an admin like I am.
So that leads to another question that came up about rare species and providing specific location information. Christy Du Bois mentioned that it's possible to obscure some of the information, but I just, I know that some people do have real concerns about posting to iNat and having collectors go and make rare species even rarer.
Yeah, so there are 2 levels that I'm aware of, and I want to be really clear. I'm not the iNat expert. I literally started in October, so everything I've learned has just been in these last 6 months.
May I say something to that when you're finished?
Okay, so in iNaturalist, you can designate a species as being so sensitive that all the data needs to be obscured. I believe eBird has that capability, and I believe that iNaturalist does too. So you can designate a species, and the user can obscure the location if they want to. So in other words, for location, what you will see is a huge, miles wide, miles across circle, or it could be a circle, the whole state if you want. So your photo is there, the identification is there, but somebody who just goes on iNat will not be able to determine what the exact location was. So there are some safeguards in there for that.
Okay, Christy, did you want to add anything to that? If you do, and then we'll go to Bob after that.
Yeah, for my career before I retired, and also now I worked a lot with the Montana Natural Heritage Program, which is our state keeper of the species data, so to speak, for a lot of critters. And they get together with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and they review species for whether or not they should be classified as a species of concern, for example. So it's something that might not be endangered, but it's rare, declining, or they just have concerns about it. So they want to flag it so that agencies who are doing, planning timber sales or whatever they do can look at these observations, look at these flag species for their project area and say, oh, well, there's something here. We have to keep an eye out for this rare plant or whatever. And iNaturalist seems, from what I can see, has will obscure the records for anything in Montana that's a designated species of concern, and that does include some invertebrates, a few butterflies, and things like great gray owls, for example, just like eBird obscures great gray owls observations for everybody. And what I do is the Natural Heritage Program has an iNaturalist project. And unfortunately, it's one of the older style ones you were talking about, where you have to consciously add your observations in. And you also have to go in there when you join a project. You can tell that project whether or not you want the administrators to see your point locations. Yep. And so I go in, all of my Montana data, I enter into the Natural Heritage Program project, and they're allowed to see my exact locations. And so then it doesn't matter. I can put in, if I'm lucky enough to find a rare butterfly, which I haven't yet, I could put it in with full confidence that the point will be obscured. And but the people who need to see it will see it. And actually, there's 3 levels. You could have a public level, so anybody can look at your observations, unless it's a species that iNaturalist obscures. And then you can have an obscured location. And what happens there is, if you try to zoom in on, you'll see a point when you're zoomed out, but when you try to zoom in on the point, it'll take your point and it'll throw it. And so I've gone through to review things, and I used to monitor bald eagle nests. Actually, I used to manage the database for bald eagle nests for the state. And so I'd go into iNaturalist, and they had an eagle nest up there. Well, I'd zoom in and realize that it was an obscured point. It gives it a different symbol. And so then I'd look at the picture and go, oh yeah, I know which one that is. That's down on the river. That's not up there in the foothills. Yeah. And so then the third level is a private location. And I know personally, I never do private, and I only obscure a few things that iNaturalist doesn't obscure. Usually things like owl nests that get too much attention from people. So, and they have those safeguards to, these days, there may be collectors out there still, but for the bird world, there's photographers. I'm one of them, but I'm not a professional. I don't go searching out things, and there's some birds in our area that get way too much attention. And I don't know, maybe some of you guys could tell me if there's still people collecting butterflies that'll actually go out and seek those rare species. I don't know if there are, but there are other species out there that they have concerns about. Yeah, I'm sure that there's reptiles in the Southwest, snakes that people love to try to go collect.
Okay, thank you, Christy, for sharing that information about the privacy protections. Bob, did you have a follow-on to that?
I would like to. Thank you very much, Paulette. All of this is good. Very impressed, Neil. Wonderful talk. I agree with John. What a fabulous resource for us all. I'd just like to put things in a little bit of perspective for people with regard to the fear of collectors and collecting. I gave a talk this morning to the Royal Entomological Society called the 50 Years of Insect Conservation. I've been involved in intensive study of butterfly conservation for over half a century. The number of cases in the US, the UK, and anywhere else where the actual harm to a population through overcollecting is virtually nil in that 50 years. There's been a lot of concern. People see people killing butterflies and they think, right, that's going to destroy the resource. It's a very different thing with reptiles in the Southwest. It's a very different thing with sessile invertebrates. And butterflies are mobile, vagile, flying insects, and they're extraordinarily difficult to reduce their numbers on a sustained basis with the very, very poor tool of a butterfly net. Now, what a butterfly net is a very, very good tool for is for monitoring where cameras don't do the job, as they sometimes don't. Those 2 skippers, Neil, you would have had them in 3 seconds if you could have seen the dorsum. They weren't at all hard that way. A little catch and release sometimes can save you a whole lot of trouble. Save Merrill that trouble too. Yeah. But not everyone.
I do catch and release.
I know you do. Not everybody wants to do that. But keep this in mind, that the number of collectors who are doing much collecting is very few compared to the number of other naturalists. It would be, of course, a very different thing if all the people doing iNaturalist now were out there collecting. Yes, then an impact could be made on more populations, but it's simply not the case. Now keep this in mind too. Those two rare metal marks, Neil, photographed in the same picture, we wouldn't have a name for them, let alone knowing that they'd never occurred in Ecuador before, or I'm mixing up some of your stories. Had it not been for some collectors sometime who provided the material for the scientists to designate. By the way, congratulations on your national record. That's fabulous. I'll just conclude by saying this. Remember David James' talk last month, and he talked about how in California now, it's illegal to touch a monarch butterfly, which has shut down all of the important butterfly tagging research, classroom instruction, and all of the traditional activity that's been done in monarchs, rearing them in families and classrooms and so on, because of the fear of certain legislators or certain regulators that, if monarchs are in trouble, we've got to shut down collecting. Nobody collects monarchs, and this isn't done anyway. And yet, it's severely hampered monarch conservation. Also, keep in mind that the insect net is still to this day the cheapest and most effective tool against nature deficit disorder with kids. Give a kid a fancy camera, they'll break it or put it down in 10 seconds. Give them a net and watch them go. We've all seen this. They don't have to become collectors, but they get out there and they encounter insects, as most of us did as kids. And as most biologists will tell you, they got started that way. So I'm far more afraid for conservation to see insect nets demonized and to see the fear of overcollecting exaggerated than I am for any collecting damage that would actually be done. All that said, go ahead and obscure anything questionable by all means. Nobody should ever violate the regulations on endangered or rare or listed species. Be very, very conservative. You do collect, almost never collect females. The males are almost unimportant to the population. The females are not. And have a sense about it, but also have sense about your worry about it, because a lot of that worry is misplaced, and it takes your energies to a different place from where they could be put in conserving habitats and doing monitoring such as you're doing. And now back to you, Neil. Wonderful talk. Thank you.
I wanted to point out that Lisa Hill has raised her hand. Lisa, do you want to unmute and ask your question or bring up your point?
I want to make a comment that might be helpful for beginners to iNat and beginners to studying insects, not just butterflies. So in summer of 2021, when most of us were still separating ourselves from everybody, I started taking photos in my backyard of just any insect that moved. I didn't care what it was. So I would upload my photos, look at them, and I go, I think that might be a fly, but I don't know for sure. So I got interested in that phone app called Seek, which is S-E-E-K, which is like the little toddler sister to iNat, mostly for beginners or kids or people who just want to take quick photos with their phone and build a database that way. I started opening that app and holding it right up to my monitor on my computer. And it told me hundreds of times at least the genus. I had somewhere to go to start looking for what is this thing that I don't even know what it is. For instance, when you were showing the Eucalacia tenebrosa from Colombia, I held that to my monitor. It instantly told me what genus it was. I mean, it's become that refined from AI that it can be so helpful. I know if you're really knowledgeable, you don't need it. But if you're just starting out with butterflies or anything like that, and you have photos of things you have not even a clue, you start looking through books and thumbing through 100 pages of something, and you spent hours looking through books. Just hold that up to your monitor, and it'll at least give you a direction to go. And I've identified hundreds and hundreds of things that way. it's extremely helpful.
So you're, Lisa, it sounds like you're not talking about photos that are in iNaturalist. They're just somewhere on your computer.
Well, once
and you're just pointing your phone at that photo that's on the screen. I never had thought of doing that. It's a great idea.
It works beautifully. I mean, I have identified literally hundreds of things because I use Seek to get me to go in the right direction, or it literally tells you genus and species. So then you go to iNat, look up that genus and species I'm in Washington. Look at all the photos that other people took of it. Does it match the photo that you just took?
Right.
Feel confident about that? I know it's like somebody maybe just handing me the answer, but I have so much in 2 years, and I found rare things in Washington. I found things that there's only my submission for that insect in Washington, which is so much fun, like, you know.
Yeah,
But
no, that's great. I thank you for yeah, thanks for sharing that idea. I'm going to try that. That sounds really fun. So Seek uses the same AI algorithm that iNat uses. So when you upload a photograph into iNat, if you let it sit there for a while, the iNat AI will work on that image, and it will often get you to genus, just in the same way that Seek does. I'm going to say only with really common species for which there aren't very many really similar looking species will it get you to all the way to genus. But yeah, it's cool. Amazing, you know, how quickly the computer can do whatever it does to identify the image.
And that all has to do with people uploading photos that are correctly identified so the AI can get better and better at it.
Right. Exactly.
So Cheryl, do you want to unmute and ask your question? Cheryl Belline.
Okay, which one is that?
You asked about the iNat butterfly project loading moths and butterflies and whether they can be separated.
Yeah, does anybody have any understanding of how that works? Because I have put a few moths in the Washington project because it pulls them in and it identifies moths as butterflies.
Well, I can speak to that since as an admin of a project, the admin or admins get to set the filters for what is in the project. If it's a collector type project, which it sounds like that one is, the admin can change the breadth of what is included. I mean, it could be set for all insects. It could be set for all butterflies and moths. It could be set for just butterflies. It could be set for one genus. It could be set for a certain area. It can be set for a certain time frame. So some projects are for like a BioBlitz, where give us every record that was submitted on this day in this area of anything. So there's a lot of filter options that are there. And so technically, yes, you could separate out the butterflies from the moths. You could separate that into 2 different projects, for example.
So that's a question for who the admin is for that project. I don't know. So we'll have to find out.
That was me, but that was just for 2020. It was a time-limited project. We don't have one currently because we did not get a lot of participation. And I left it as just all Lepidoptera because the only way I could see to separate out moths from butterflies was to go through family by family, which I didn't feel like doing. So I just left it open to Lepidoptera, but it was just for 2020. So it should not still be collecting things.
I think it is.
Well, maybe somebody has started a new one that I don't know about. I mean, anybody could start one.
There's another point about Ann Kilby. If you want to unmute, you're welcome to do that. Questioning whether Washington prohibits netting right now, even for catch and release. And I don't remember what the status of that is. Do you know, Bob?
I got that information just last week when I attended a Washington Native Bees Society Zoom. I'm out of area at the moment, but anyway, and that's what they were saying. And I know I got it straight what they meant.
Can you please tell me what they said again and who said it?
Yeah, we didn't get that.
Well, I didn't get anybody's names.
Were these officials in the Department of Fish and Wildlife or what?
This was a meeting of the Washington Native Bee Society. It was a Zoom. There was a presentation and so forth. And in the course of that, it was stated that thou shalt not catch a bug even if you let it go again. And that was the first I'd ever heard of that, you know, and this was supposed to be for the state of Washington. And I was very surprised. I haven't had time to follow up because I have a lot of other stuff going on here. I'm in California where we had the earthquakes and stuff.
Yes.
And so,
well, thank you for telling us about that. John and I have certainly not heard about that. You know, I mean, we have just banned assault rifles, which I want to express opinions in this forum about that, but I don't think we've got to the point of banning butterfly nets yet.
No, we haven't. What the deal is that certain people in the Native Bee Society have interpreted the wildlife codes to mean that you cannot net insects. But, you know, when I talk to my sources at DFW, they say, no, that's crazy. But they are actually, the Bee Society is actually working on legislation to specify that, yes, absolutely, you can continue to collect insects. But so it's just a matter of interpretation. There are people in the Bee Society who say that their interpretation is that you cannot.
Who's speaking, please?
Regina.
Oh, Regina. Okay, thank you. Well, good. I'm glad it's just that. Let me tell you that at high levels of the Lepidoptera Society and other entomological societies right now, there's a good deal of discussion coming out of the discussion of the insect apocalypse, that what we need, of course, now is more insect survey in the world than we ever have needed. And that it's this kind of an idea that may grow out of the California overreaction that has entomologists absolutely running scared, because if they can't do their work, then of course, extinctions will only increase. Well, that point's already been made, but thanks for bringing that to our attention. It's exactly the kind of overreaction, if it really did occur, that one would be concerned about. And there are places in the world, for example, Germany, where this has become a regulation. Entomology has almost come to a standstill in the entire country of Germany on that account. So we'll keep our eyes open. I think there are many, many officials in the Department of Fish and Wildlife, certainly some important ones, who recognize the importance. Just yesterday, John and I received a message about the island marble, the federally endangered island marble, from the chief person at the Washington Fish and Wildlife Agency, who was concerned about a particular individual butterfly. And she certainly is very knowledgeable about the fact that while that butterfly should not be collected, of course, nonetheless, her question could have been answered easily if the butterfly were in hand, but could not be answered at all otherwise. So I don't think we're there yet, but yeah, if you hear stories like this and they seem credible, please do keep us informed, because those kinds of talks will have to be had.
Yes, well, and I have joined, excuse me, the Bumblebee Atlas here, and also the Pacific Northwest Bumblebee Atlas. And there was no talk of it amongst the bumblebee people. It was only this meeting last week. So
thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other questions? Trying to scan. Anne and Christy, did you get your questions answered about photographic equipment? Are there any other questions or any other comments?
I just wanted to make the comment in terms of collectors. For those of you who know Norbert Kandla up there in Canada, he's got a wonderful Flickr page where he's been posting photographs of his butterfly collections, a really valuable resource. And he's also started entering those photographs into iNaturalist.
Yeah.
And so there are ways, if you do have a collection, to actually contribute to iNaturalist. They'll take pictures of a mounted specimen. It doesn't have to be a picture in the wild.
Thank you, Christy. I'm so glad you made that point. And in my column for WABA, just the current issue, I do mention Norbert, and I mentioned the point that if anybody is watching his postings about the enormous variability of fritillaries and other things that he has documented across the western part of the hemisphere, there are a lot of specimens involved. He's got a big collection, and some people will look at that and see, oh my gosh, the depredations he's done. But he's only touched the tiniest bit of that vast territory and those large populations. And in the meantime, he's given us a database that's absolutely incomparable about the variation of those many species that John and others are able to work with in determining their taxonomy. So it's good service, and it's good to be aware of. And again, Christy, I'm glad you brought up Norbert. He's been an indefatigable worker for understanding the fauna. And I know it will offend some people's sensibilities to see a large series of butterflies in a collection, but that is where our knowledge has come from in the past. And
he's my colleague, and he co-authored the description of Asher's Blue. So I know Norbert for 30 years.
Yeah.
I've never met him, but I'm always happy when he helps identify my butterfly pictures. Neil, I feel the same way you do. I'm not very good at butterflies, and I get confused easily, and Meryl has weighed in on them. I think it's great.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Norbert also, both because he's posting scans that he's made of butterflies that actually were collected in Oregon by Andy Warren, of like species like Taylor's checker spot and some other species that are going to be a great resource for us. As well, he's weighed in, like I've called him in on iNat a few times when we had a bit of back and forth about a coleus that, well, it's got characteristics of interior and it's got characteristics of skinneri. And he would come in and he would just line it out in detail. This is what it is, and these are the 5 things that I'm basing that on. It's like, what a resource. Right, and he wouldn't know all that if he hadn't collected and studied them so deeply, these long series. So
precisely.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something. So I'm really excited about this. I just signed up for iNaturalist this past weekend, and published my margined white that I found when I was out with Melanie. But I have a lot of photos from my travels all over the world of butterflies. And some of them I know what they are and some I don't. But I never thought of posting them anyplace. So I have a swallowtail that I took behind a hotel in Tokyo, Japan.
Wow.
I think Kiyoshi told me what it was, but it's like I have to research that. And then there were some butterflies when I was on a trip in Australia, and I was actually able to figure out what it was and share it with my group. And then we were just in Sicily, and I took a lot of butterfly pictures. There weren't a whole lot of them, but I took them. They're still on my phone. I haven't even looked at them again. But when I was in Ecuador, and I think it was probably 2001, I went down there for a month to immerse myself in Spanish. And I was up in the kind of a jungle at of all things, a trout farm. I think that's when I first saw my 88. And it was such an obvious butterfly because it's got the 88 on it, right? And I think I have a picture of it. I'm not sure, but I also saw it when I was at the Napo River on a trip later in Ecuador. And the fact that you had the first one published from like recently, it's like, that's amazing. So now I don't take a lot of butterfly pictures, but now I actually want to go find them all and put them out there for what
Excellent. I love it. And so, yeah, there are a bunch of calicore species that look real similar.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't, I literally was not able to identify the one I had as Astarte, even with, you know, some photos of all the different species, because they're subtle.
I'm pretty sure I have a picture of the blue morpho that nice. Bob Hardwick tricked me with. That it was dead. I was on a bird trip with him and a bunch of WABA people. We went with Shirley Sack. I don't know the rest of her name, but we were in northwestern Ecuador. It was actually a bird trip. Of course, we were looking at butterflies too. And he found this dead morpho and he laid it out behind our lodge. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a morpho, it's a morpho. And I'm pretty sure I took pictures of it, but Shirley came rushing over and then she goes, there's no body. It's like, oh, I guess it's dead. And Bob Hardwick was over there just laughing so hard because he tricked me into thinking it was a live one. But anyway, so yeah, I'm excited about looking through my old few pictures and posting them out there.
That reminds me of a little story. So when I started to review like all the sightings of Oregon butterflies, I started to notice there were tropical butterflies that were shown as being photographed in Douglas County or up by the Dalles, and I was a little puzzled, and so I would write to the people posting them, and you know, some of them were in butterfly enclosures and escaped, and some of them the people swore no, it was wild, and I'm sure that's where it was. And then I came across a photo on iNat of a pair of earrings. It was a post that showed the quote sighting being along the Columbia River, and it was one of those black and white Asian butterflies. I'm forgetting the genus name, but it's called like rice paper or something. They're really beautiful and large white butterflies. But the wings were encased in some kind of resin, and somebody had made earrings out of them. And the person posted this on iNat as a butterfly sighting in Oregon. And I wrote to them and I suggested that they remove it. And I have never been flamed so voraciously and foully as this person flamed me. So as an admin for the Oregon Butterflies of Oregon project, I filtered that person out.
That's good. That butterfly was in the genus Idea, I-D-E-A.
Yeah, that's right.
Rice paper butterflies, they're big and they are monarchs. They're Danaans, related to monarchs. And here's a little story about those. And your hotel in Tokyo, Cheryl. I was at a hotel in Okinawa, and there was a little butterfly house built onto the side of it to rear exactly one species, and it was the rice paper butterfly that had become extinct in the city of Naha in Okinawa. And they were rearing them in there on a species of milkweed. And when they pupated, you know how monarch pupae have gold spots on them. And a lot of butterfly chrysalides have them. That's what chrysalide or chrysalis means. It means gold. And that's why early lepidopterists were known as the Aurelians. That means gold also. One's Greek, one's Roman. Well, the chrysalides of this species are absolutely solid gold. They look like drop wax, hot, goldsmith, little earrings of gold. Mm-hmm. They're completely gold, like fritillary spots or silver. So they would put a special ornamental green tree next to the milkweed, and the caterpillars would go walk about on the green tree and pupate there, which was then like a little Christmas tree of golden ornaments, which they then brought into the lobby of the hotel and allowed to be there to gratify and amaze the patrons until they hatched, at which point they were released out into the city in the effort to reestablish the species.
Wow.
But the Columbia Gorge, no.
I gotta say that an Indea is a large butterfly. Making an earring out of one cover half your face.
No, the earring. Yeah, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I could see
they
the
were
earring
big
out of the pupa very easily, but not the butterfly.
I have one more data entry question for Neil.
Yes.
Have you checked out the app that's called LEPS by Field Guide?
I have not. I have not even heard of it.
Yeah, you should check that out. It's a like iNaturalist, you can do it online or via a phone app. And I usually enter my Lepidoptera sightings online. And but one of the tricks is that you can cross post it by linking it to your iNaturalist account. So sort of a 2-for-1. And I find it when you enter in something into iNaturalist, you could click on suggest an ID, and iNaturalist will suggest something. And I find that LEPS for moths in particular does a little bit better job of getting the ID right. Since they're both AI based, they could both be wrong, you know. But anyway, you might check that one out too. And the guy who manages that, Andre, he's really good. I emailed him about Asher's blue and said, hey, there's a new species of blue, you need to get into LEPS, and he put it in. So nice. But his taxonomy doesn't always match iNaturalist either. It's just a matter of, you know, which authority they're following for taxonomy is what it amounts to. And you guys know more about it than I do. But anyway, I was just curious if you'd checked out anything else like that. He's got one for odonates, which I haven't really used much. But I do enjoy his LEPS app.
Great. Thank you for letting me know about that.
Thank you so much. I am your AI companion. I will help you.
All right.
All right.
Well, good to see you all. Those of you who I've met before. Jeff Miller, good to see you.
Jeff here.
Thanks for being here. And Bob.
Talk about a person who has added a great deal to the knowledge of Northwest Lepidoptera, particularly the moths. We have in our midst Jeff Miller at OSU, who has made enormous contributions, not only to trying to keep the Bacillus thuringiensis, the BT, from wiping out the moths of our forest lands. Now that is a concern, much more than gnats, but also in the general natural history and illumination of our fauna. Jeff, I wanted to say that because it's such a delight to see you here tonight.
Thanks, Bob. I think I unmuted.
You did.
Unmuted, yes, we can hear you.
I happen to be giving a talk for the first time in 8 years. I retired in 2015 in Medford to the Rogue Valley Pollination Group on mapping butterflies and their food plants.
Oh, great.
So I have resurrected John Hinchliffe's database that Dana and I digitized from his notebooks.
Yep.
And Neil has given me records, Dana's given me records, and I've done all the Pomona and Scan and Symbiosis and everybody else records. Great. And I'm point mapping John Hinchliffe-esque records for Oregon and superimposing that to the Oregon flora maps for food plants. It's very interesting.
There's your answer, John. You and I were wondering who is going to be doing that kind of record work in Oregon. Sounds like Jeff's doing it.
He is indeed. Can I tell him where we're thinking of putting that?
Yes.
On the internet?
You may.
So Jeff and I made an agreement that if technically we can make it happen, it's going to go on butterfliesoforegon.com.
Great.
So each butterfly will not only have its own range map, but there'll be a portal where you can do the kind of live searching as well. So that's partly why I'm moving the website this year to a new platform that can handle all that.
Hello.
So very exciting. I'm very excited about what Jeff is doing and how we can make that available.
Do you have a time frame for that?
Oh boy, no, I don't.
Okay.
I just got a 7,500 data dump from Scan, and I still have 1,500 to go to rectify. And I really appreciate what John Hinchliffe had to do when he read labels and put TRSs on them. And then I converted the TRSs to lat longs. There is a lot of fuzziness going on here. So these aren't going to be exact points, but they're going to be as good as you can get, except for the modern things, and particularly Neil's database is the best ever. He's got the lat longs to 5 digits, which is more than enough. So I would like to ask John and Bob, the county chart you've made for Oregon subspecies, who wants feedback on that?
Was that now?
The county map.
Yeah. What was your question?
For records to the subspecies, who wants feedback?
I am kind of in charge of that. So
okay.
If you got feedback, let's do it.
And is it immediate or how quick?
Well, it's ongoing. I mean, you know, like when you're in the process of doing something that's already a decades-long adventure, you got to figure there's going to be a decade in the future too. So anytime you have something, you know, anytime that you want to add something or ask a question, I'm good for it, right?
Okay. One thing I'm doing is I'm helping Dana get all of his refrigerator and frozen records into a digital database.
Right.
So that's my great accomplishment.
That is a great accomplishment.
He already has some new count. He has new subspecies records for your chart.
Oh, I'm absolutely certain of that. I am so glad to hear that you're taking charge of this, because you know what it is. You just talked about it, the fudginess of, you know, 40, 50-year-old records, but the fact that they add with what you have and you get this resolution that you can't get any other way. You know, we had 1,200 records of Spirea coronis for Washington. Individual records, 1,200. You know what that does to a map? It makes it clear where that butterfly is and isn't.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're doing an overlay on food plant, that's perfect. That's beautiful. You know, I love it.
For those of you that know that John, you know, did Washington and Oregon as point dot maps back in the mid 90s, I can double the density of those dots now.
No doubt. Yeah.
You
got my email address, right?
Pardon?
You have my email address, right?
I do not. You want to give it to everybody?
Well, I mean, it's on the Butterflies of America catalog. It's right there in the opening, intro. So
that's my Bible, John.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, I am not your Lord, however.
Well, I want to thank you all for having me and for all the discussion and ideas and questions. It's been a pleasure. Let's do it again soon. I appreciate so much before as I said about WABA and all the great work you're doing and how we're benefiting from that in Oregon. So thanks again. I'm going to sign off here.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. And this was our last meeting. We're going to break for the field season and we'll resume in September. So thanks for bringing us up to speed on iNaturalist, Neil.
You bet.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Happy butterflying.
Happy butterflying. Have a good season.
Thanks.
Thanks, Neil.
Good night, everybody.